Hello, I'm Saloni, and this is my talk about LeSS and DEI. President Donald Trump doesn't like diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, otherwise known as DEI. He thinks that they're a very bad thing. He's scrapping them everywhere he can, calling them radical, wasteful, and discriminatory. He says he's just restoring meritocracy. So on January the 20th, 2025, he signed the Executive Order 14151 to end radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing. But what astonished me wasn't just the rhetoric. It was how seemingly overnight, literally in days, programs were shut down, councils dissolved, training cancelled, websites disappeared. Whole structures gone with the stroke of a pen. This tells us something very important. It confirms what we as organizational designers already know. That if something is not tightly woven into the system, it's at risk. Bolt-ons and initiatives will always be vulnerable to rollbacks. And so before we move on to the discussion on organizational design, which of course is the main thrust of this talk, I feel like, given that I opened with some of Trust's facts, I should give what some people would call alternate facts, just for some completion. It's widely accepted that companies with gender-diverse leadership are more likely to financially outperform those without, by somewhere in the region of 20 to 27%, depending on the source. Ethnically diverse leadership add its own performance edge. And here in the Netherlands, PwC estimates that companies could unlock a massive 51 billion euros in value with just changing to more age-diverse boards. So, wasteful? Hardly. Diversity seems to deliver. But of course, Trump was particularly talking about the workforce, and so I would like to present some alternate facts here too, for completeness. In the UK, it's estimated that 4 in 5 employers already see tangible benefits from having a diverse workforce. They're talking about better retention, higher engagement, and actually improved reputation. The OECD, which stands for the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, which operates over 38 member countries, has said that by embracing a multi-generational workforce, you can raise GDP per person by around 19%. And firms, again, in the Netherlands say that by employing a more diverse foreign workforce, they are seeing more innovation, and particularly, and more interesting for us, in product innovation. Now, these are only a few facts. I found lots more, but I kind of felt that I didn't need to labor this, given that most of you work with teams, so I hope you see this as self-evident. You see, and I hope that you agree, diversity isn't just for boards, it's for everyone. So given that DEI is so important and gives us great value, you would think that the goals would be well protected, and there is no shortage of advice on how to do that. The Harvard Business School, in its paper, Are Your Organization's DEI Efforts Superficial or Structural?, says that DEI should not be scaffolding. It should be embedded, integral to the organizational structure. The MIT, in their paper, How Integrating DEI into Strategy Lifts Performance, says that the DEI ambitions should be simplified and woven into the strategies so they're aligned with the business objectives. And the KPMG Harvard Business Review paper talked about the 3 areas that companies should invest in. And these are embedding into strategy, setting measurable goals and accountability at all levels. So it's all good stuff, right? Ring any bells? Systemic, simplification, alignment. And I guess this is where we might start feeling a little bit smug, right? Because the reality is that LeSS design feels so aligned to these ideas. It appears to be naturally inclusive. LeSS is systemic. It does focus on simplicity, and it aligns everyone to the whole product, not just local teams. Much of the LeSS thinking has come from the deep work of Bars and Craig, but they didn't explicitly set out to create a DEI framework. They aimed for true agility, simplicity in large-scale product work, and adaptiveness. And in doing so, many of these inclusion-friendly attributes have emerged. So let's have a look at a few of them. Let's look at these first three structures. We can take feature teams, flat structures, and communities of practice. Feature teams enable equal voice and value. The flatter the structure, the more impactful and inclusive leadership can be. Communities of practice with their low or no barriers to entry, well, they welcome everybody. So even if you just take these three, when they work in harmony, they ensure that silos are removed, so we hear and benefit from the variety of voices across the breadth and the depth of organizations. And they help create safe, dynamic spaces to discuss, to challenge, to collaborate, to celebrate, and channels different opinions. And I know the organizational perfection vision isn't part of the structure, but I love this idea that you can bring people together to describe how they want to work. And it means you have this amazing opportunity to set an inclusive tone together. And even then, we can now move to the LeSS principles. So again, I've just picked three. So I've got here systems thinking, transparency, and whole product focus. Again, system thinking, well, that encourages shared mental models. Transparency, there's nowhere to hide. It'll keep us honest. And the whole product focus, there are no blind spots if everybody is focused on the outcome together. So if used well, it seems like inclusion gets automatically taken care of. And even just these three alone show that they would make biases really hard to hide. So what does that tell us? That LeSS adoptions kill it when it comes to DEI. Because why wouldn't they, right? Diversity is good for the product, it's good for the customer, it's good for the shareholder, and we don't need to compromise on any of our practices to achieve it. Perhaps it tells us that in a parallel universe, if everyone adopted LeSS, first of all, President Trump would find it incredibly hard to identify the DEI programs because they'd be so interwoven and ingrained into the company culture. But also, he'd have nowhere to go with his argument that DEI is not compatible with meritocracy. Because when you use this term correctly, meritocracy, LeSS does deliver meritocracy because people advance on contribution, on their ability, and on the outcomes. There are not on their titles nor hidden hierarchies. With flat structures, you have fewer layers, hopefully, and less politics. With the transparency, everybody can see who's delivering what. You can't hide in the reporting lines. With the whole product focus, we move from looking at local heroics to rewarding those who are delivering true customer value. And with the self-managed teams, we can see that people will advance by contribution and not title. So you see the point. The very same structures and elements of LeSS that are good for DEI are also good for awarding true contribution and for creating great products. So there we have it. It's a slam-shut case, serendipitous even. LeSS is good for DEI, which in turn is great for organizations, and it's protected because LeSS structures and principles help weave it into how we work. Well done, us. But I would now like to enter into evidence this book. And as our dear friend Craig always says, please read this. In 2019, Caroline Criado Perez wrote a book called Invisible Women, Exposing Data Bias in a World Designed for Men. Her argument is devastatingly simple. Most of the systems that we think of as being neutral, they're not neutral at all. They're built on a massive data gap. Her book is a compelling compendium, sadly, of some truly alarming and sometimes heartbreaking stats that cover the whole spectrum from street designs to medical trials. You're probably thinking, yeah, what, a modern book talking about data gaps? Maybe in those old-fashioned companies, not in like a modern tech company that's obsessed with data. So, given that LeSS is about creating great products, let me share just 2 small examples of hers from a very modern tech company concerning 2 of their flagship products. You may have heard of it. When Apple launched its health monitoring system with much fanfare in 2014, it boasted a comprehensive health tracker. It could track blood pressure, steps taken, blood alcohol levels, even molybdenum, no, me neither, and copper intake. But as many women pointed out at the time, they forgot one crucial detail. A period tracker. So then we must move forward 2 years to 2016. When Apple launched their AI Siri, she, ironically, could find prostitutes and Viagra suppliers, but not abortion providers. Siri could help you if you'd had a heart attack. But if you told her you'd been raped, she'd reply, I don't know what you mean by I was raped. These are basic errors that surely would have been caught by a team with enough women on it, that is, by a team without a gender data gap. And the point also to bear in mind was this came just 1 year after research showed that it was women who were more likely to buy iPhones than men, i.e., this was their majority customer. It seems weird, right? But in fact, she cites so many examples which she says are marked as gender neutral, but they are in fact biased towards men, and perhaps it surprises you just how many of them are in the tech domain. But it's not just about the tech products. It's just as much about the tech companies too. And this is where, for me anyway, it became a little bit more uncomfortable. She writes, it's not entirely clear why the tech industry is so afraid of sex-disaggregated employment data, but its love affair with the myth of meritocracy might have something to do with it. If all you need to get your best people is to believe in meritocracy, then what use is data to you? And her observations continue. According to a 2016 survey, the #1 concern of tech startup founders was hiring good people, while having a diverse workforce ranked only 7 on the list of 10 business priorities. And in fact, a quarter said they didn't much care about diversity at all. So she looks across all of the data and analysis and draws a conclusion. When taken together, it points to a belief that if you want to find the best people, addressing structural bias is unnecessary. A belief in meritocracy is all you need. Which, hang on, sounds very similar to what our friend President Trump was saying. Ouch. Chilling, well, it was to me, but it also helps me make sense of it all, especially in the case of tech, where because ensuring DEI was so undervalued, as we saw at the beginning of the year, it was so easy to give it up. So, is the tech world stuffed with misogynists and racists? I don't think so. But it does come back to a question on data, which is ironic given that we're so enthralled with the potential of big data. Because when you don't collect the data, you don't see the problem. And when you don't see the problem, you keep designing exclusion in without realizing it. And in fact, in her very opening chapter, she wrote, "One of the most important things to say about the gender data gap is that it's not generally malicious or even deliberate. Quite the opposite. It is simply the product of a way of thinking that has been around for a millennia and is therefore a kind of not thinking." And here's the real kicker. You don't have to believe in meritocracy to fall into the same trap. I mean, I know I certainly didn't. I personally never thought that meritocracy was enough. When I first read Invisible Women in 2019, it absolutely floored me. Here I was, a senior leader in a technical, data-rich environment, priding myself on being a systemic thinker and being progressive. I mean, hello, brown woman in banking management. And yet here too, I had been guilty of this not thinking. I was so shaken and so excited, I think, what any rational person would do. I immediately ordered copies for my all-white male peer groups on the executive committee and handed them out like prize goodies. Oh, the reaction. Not as I hoped. Yes, there was one colleague who was really pleased, and he went on to read it cover to cover and thanked me genuinely. His eyes were newly opened. But at the other end of the spectrum, a colleague, the head of data no less, he didn't look very happy, and he flicked through it and looked me dead in the eye and said, "Books like this are dangerous." And I think that's when it hit me. This book really unsettles because it causes reflection. We all believe in the systems that we've built, in the professionalism of our work. But when you're faced with page after page of blind spots, you have to confront the uncomfortable possibility that you've done the same. And that's exactly the challenge we face in LeSS. So the question isn't, does LeSS support DEI? It's, what do we really know? Do we see who's included and who isn't? Or are we just trusting the system? Perhaps a better question is, what do we really know about how inclusive our LeSS adoptions actually are? And this is where I want to turn the mirror back on us, the LeSS community, the data we collect and the assumptions that we make. In the LeSS community, we often laugh at the old saying, what gets measured gets managed. Because we all know that once you measure something, people start gaming it, and LeSS as a whole is not a big fan of metrics for metrics' sakes. It's more about observing the dynamics of the organization through empirical process control and systemic thinking. I'm not a fan of vanity or proxy metrics, but surely worse than gaming metrics is not collecting them at all. And when it comes to DEI and LeSS, it turns out we aren't collecting much. So what data do we have? Here's what we do know. We have around 18,000 certified LeSS practitioners worldwide. We have 32 trainers. We have 77 people in the candidate trainer pipeline. And beyond that, nothing much more. We don't disaggregate our data, and we don't track ethnicity, so we don't really know much more than this. So we have to make some educated guesses. We don't know how many LeSS adoptions there are worldwide or how they're made up, so we can only use the CLP as a kind of representation. So we think that 16% of practitioners are women, 1/6. So that's about 2,880 women out of 18,000 practitioners. Trainers, Well, this one was easy. I could just look at them. There are 0 women in the trainer population. And the candidate pipeline, there are 5 women in the pipeline of 77, so about 6 or 7%. But we know the conversion rate is very low, so we don't know how many we will lose during that process. And ethnicity? Well, let's be honest, with the majority of adoptions and training to date in America, Germany, the UK, and the Netherlands, we can safely assume that the data leans towards a very white, very Western European pool. So, why is this an issue? I've come up with my own one, the 3 Bs: bias, barriers, and bros. So, bias, cognitive thoughts, because we know this about mental models, right? Unseen mental models can shape what we see and what we don't see. Barriers, structures, systems, this is the stuff that silently obstructs inclusion. And the bros, the cultures, the behaviors, because access often depends on who you know. So just think about it. If 85% of practitioners are men, and 100% of our trainers are men, then whose lived experiences are shaping our adoptions, our stories, our case studies, and whose don't? With only, in best case, 6 or 7% of the women in the trainer pipeline converting to trainers, the future will look pretty similar to where we are today. We often talk about psychological safety, and if some voices still don't feel safe to speak, is that a people problem or a structural problem? And when access depends on networks and informal hierarchies, the same groups keep inviting more of the same. Team self-design is often hailed as a hallmark of LeSS, but, to give people voice and agency. But let's be honest, self-design isn't in itself automatically inclusive. So actually, if we come back to my previous slide where I showed how LeSS was brilliant for DEI, we realize that without DEI, LeSS doesn't get the rich value that it needs to succeed. The feature teams without DEI will just end up being homogeneous. The flat structures will still have the informal hierarchical rules. The communities of practice, yes, they might be open to everyone, but the loudest voices become an echo chamber. And the perfection vision, which I love so much, everyone doesn't mean everyone. Trump said that DEI was radical, it was wasteful, it was discriminatory. But the real waste is leaving inclusion to chance. Because in lean terms, unused talent is waste. Missed voices, missed ideas, missed customers, waste by omission. And unless, we really should know better. So, remember guys, always inspect, always adapt, and please, for the love of LeSS, sex disaggregate your data. Thank you.
Questions?
Okay. Oh!
Well, Saloni, why aren't you a trainer?
Why aren't I a trainer? I'm still on the road. Yes, it's a long journey, and this is not, just to take a step back, I feel able to have this conversation because actually in a lot of the communities I'm a member of, this is probably the one which has the fewest number of egos. It's a very warm and welcoming environment. And this is why I kind of think we could do better, because I think, in my view, it's just this not looking. I gave the example of my lived experience in my organization, but I'm part of this community and I care about it very much too. So when my eyes were open, I just thought, wow, this is something we could apply to ourselves. We could be better here because we've got all the tools for it. So yes, this is done out of love.
You started with the data,
yep.
Where people with inclusive leadership were more successful.
Yeah.
Are there studies whether that's directly related to the inclusion, or that there's inherently a culture where inclusion is naturally? So can you force successfulness by introducing DEI, or wouldn't it be better to have it inherently in your culture to be more successful?
I think some cultures are more open to being more inclusive, some are not. But I think the data has shown when you have it, it always works really well. So I think it's just a question of how hard that organization needs to work to make sure it is inclusive. A lot of that studies have come from Europe. I'll be honest, most of my European I picked up from the Euro side. But there's nothing in there that said that some cultures had advantage over the other. It was just saying, this is a really good thing. And there's a lot of data to show that, if that answers the question. I'm not sure, was that right? Yeah.
Thank you. Just one question to you. Is it okay if I take 1 minute to explain the story? That
Yes.
go exactly in your sense.
Good, let's hear it.
Good. So in the company where I work, in 2021, we were 3 agile coaches. I was the youngest one, 3 men, white, so 0 inclusivity. But in the company, we proud ourselves to really take care of this topic. So we designed a recruiting system where we would not discriminate, where we would include, where we look at all those things. Nonetheless, all the offers we got and all the candidates that go through were men.
Yeah.
So at some point we realized, okay, this cannot be, like what's going on? We tried different things and we talked to some experts. And at some point we had like a small hinge, and we gave the job offer to some women colleagues in the company and just asked, would you apply? And they said, no, I would not. Yeah, why? Yeah, all these bullet points and all the skills that you request, this one I don't have it, so I would never apply.
Yeah.
We asked then her to rewrite it. And since then, we run in the opposite direction. We have almost only women that apply. I just wanted to showcase that there is a systemic part, obviously, to the process and to the system, but sometimes in places where we don't really look, because the process could be not discriminating, but still the barrier, the entry barrier could be wrongly placed.
Exactly, and what one person sees as a barrier, another person doesn't. It's as simple as that, and that's great. That's great news.
Absolutely. So have a look at your processes and your system.
I shortly would like just to thank you, Saloni, for your talk, because we did not speak about that before. And I really appreciate that you raised this topic.
Okay.
We're hanging around since years in this community, and in the pipeline. And we never spoke really about that. So, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So, thank you. Same thought as you mentioned also, and absolutely brilliant. And so, I wonder about potential chicken-egg problem, because we don't have enough women and just general diversity in the community, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And so this is basically inherent blindness for that. So even seeking proper data points is challenging simply because you're kind of blind. And so I wonder if how you see that. Is there a chicken and egg problem, or no, really? Like, how do you even actually attract, like the story that you just mentioned, like how do you even come up with that idea? I mean, and you need to have women to ask that question in the first place. And so, yeah, I wonder how you look at that,
My feeling is always that although everybody cares in LeSS, nobody cares enough. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's like it's only when something causes friction we put some urgency to it. So although we're all aware that it's a problem, I think all of us in the community have been happy to sort of rumble along with it for a while. So I think actually if we really do want to look at this, we do need to come together and look at this structurally and look at the data. I mean, big shout out to Bastian, by the way, a CEO who very happily gave me everything without actually ever checking what I was going to say about the LeSS company. He gave me all the data. And together we realized actually there really wasn't very much. So there's small steps we can start taking, but we don't even know the problem that we're having. I mean, I know we don't have the data on, for example, the LeSS adoptions themselves. When I was looking into this, for example, one of the questions I asked Bastian was how many of our people are Scrum Masters? And the reason I asked that and we didn't have the data was because I'd read another report said that in the Agile, actually the job description of Scrum Master is probably the most equitable job description around in this day and age. They estimate that 38% of Scrum Masters are women, which is really high in the tech industry. So if 38% of women worldwide are Scrum Masters, are 38% of our women who are people who are coming to our Scrum Masters women? That's the kind of stuff I think we should be looking at to say, well, where are they? Because they clearly do exist. So I think we just need to, in the same way, in that lovely professional, diligent way we look at our LeSS adoptions, there's a little bit about doing a little bit back to us in our LeSS community as well. And I think it's just putting that care and attention and focus on it, because I'm convinced we have all the answers. It's LeSS is full of all these wonderful techniques, and it works very well in the working world, so I don't see why we couldn't have some success with it here. We're just about to launch a new program around coaches. What a brilliant time to bring in something here and maybe try and make that coaching community a little bit easier. Think about the barriers to entry. Think about how we're advertising it. Are women wanting to be coaches? It's a brilliant time. It's never too late, so I'm encouraged. And by the way, and thank you, by the way, this talk was because this man right here challenged me to have a talk about this 2 years ago, and he's completely forgotten. He's like, if you feel so strongly, why don't you do a talk about it? Ta-da!
Otherwise, I have a question, but you can follow first. Yeah, thank you for the very nice talk, very inspiring. Do you think DEI actually should be added to LeSS as a principle or value?
Personally, no. I think I sort of said this before. I worry about things being. I think if you look at all of our things that we have in LeSS or not already, it's already covered. I think we need to put some focus on it. I always worry about adding stuff, and I'd be very scared if Bas was stood in this room right now thinking about systemic thinking. But immediately, when we start talking about stuff, there's this initial thing of let's start an initiative. And I hate that. I kind of think it has to be naturally within the system already. And I think I hopefully have shown you that actually if you use all of this stuff, we can end up achieving DEI. We just have to put some objectives within our perfection vision or something like that. But I think that's the way. It's got to be organic. I always worry about when it becomes something separate, then you just tear it out when it's no longer the flavor. It's got to be so embedded that you don't even notice. You don't even notice when you walk into the office and everyone's a different ethnicity, different ages. You just don't notice because it's just your reality. So that's my wish, because I think that's what LeSS should be.
You had a question, so I'll ask mine first. Victor, you want to? Okay. One of the things you mentioned was if you don't know it, so you need different perspectives at the table, right? And what are ways that we can, not just in LeSS, but maybe in this industry, do that better or get to different perspectives so we see what we don't see?
It's hard. I think it's just literally. I mean, I love this idea there. The gentleman there was talking about. He just gave it to somebody who he didn't expect to be able. He wasn't. I think that was just a left field move, right? It was just like, and I think that's a little bit about it. I mean, I think the weird thing is you just don't realize, I know it sounds really odd, but you just don't realize that you're not including that data. We all laughed at those Apple examples because it just seems so dumb. But they're not dumb, they're experts in their fields. You just don't see it. I didn't see it. The example that you gave was very similar to one that I had. I just recruited for a tech center in India. And I was really happy with the data that came through. We'd hired 100 people. I think we had like 8 women. I was like, and then I was like, what? Only 8? I mean, come on. There's got to be more 8 women than 8 women in Pune. The next time we ran it, we completely changed it around. We did a technical test first. So if and then the people didn't meet anyone, that we took the names off the CVs. 5 different people helped write the job description, including a woman from India. And the next thing I know, we had more women applying for that feature team than we had men. So that was me, and I think I'm really good at this. So I think this is your point. I think you've just got to go everywhere. I mean, we talk about this all the time, walking in the customer suit, being more customer-centric. We got to look at our community and say, why have I not got to that person, I think.
Yeah, maybe Joanne and I had the idea to do some systems thinking practicing tomorrow. Perhaps on this topic, because I think systems thinking is the best way to get multiple perspectives involved.
That'd be
to
brilliant.
Look at it from different perspectives.
Yeah, you stole it, right? So I like to think of this question as the same question when any organization comes and wants to change. So first what we do an extensive education, so people will start to understand the whole thing better.
Yeah.
And this is important because unless they know the basic rules, even with the systems thinking, their models are constrained. So first of all, and basically that's the answer to your question, first of all, we need to educate ourselves. And then we'll start moving somewhere else.
Yeah. It was really interesting. I had 3 men today said to me, what's DEI? And it's really funny because I think if you're a woman, you know what it is. It's because if it touches your, if it touches your world, you're aware of it. And if you're, and these are 3 really nice male friends of mine here, right? They're like, what, is it a big thing? It's like, oh my God, where have you been? But of course, because it affects my reality, I think everybody knows what DEI is. It didn't occur to me to write diversity, equity, and inclusion in the title. And these are 3 bright men who went, what was it? What's to talk about? So, educate everyone. That was me not realizing that I hadn't actually explained to my audience, my potential audience, what I was going to talk about. So yeah, we've got work to do. We've got work to do.
Okay. Thank you, Saloni.
You're very welcome.
Another round.